John Healey resigned, citing a lack of defence spending as the issue. So there's the Defence Investment Plan, which would increase defence spending from 2.6% of GDP, which it is at the moment, to 2.68% of GDP by 2030.
By very, very little.
Very little, yeah. And John Healey's resigned. I thought his letter. Did you read his letter?
I did.
It's quite interesting. There was a line in it where he said that. Can you remember what he said about the safety of the UK?
I can't remember exactly the words, but yeah, he did suggest that was something for us to worry about.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting because it was quite with these resignation letters, they're often not as brazen as that, as talking about you are making the UK a potentially dangerous place. Which is interesting. Since then, Al Carnes has followed him. So Al Carnes was the Armed Forces Minister. He was elected MP in 2024 and rose very quickly to a ministerial position, which is quite unusual. It's something that's changed nowadays. In the past, it would be almost like a traditional probation period for new MPs.
Apprenticeship, almost.
Yeah, exactly. And I think new MPs, the old timers would say, well, you can't expect a ministerial position in your first term as an MP. But he rose very quickly, which in some ways is surprising because they have a massive pool of MPs to choose from. But on the flip side, there's a load of new MPs. And there's been, particularly in the last few elections, there's been a high turnover of MPs, more than previous years. He is somebody that's being talked about as potential future Labour leader.
Another one.
The odds for Al Carnes and John Healey to become next Labour leader have been cut a little bit. Still not favourites, but certainly more than they were yesterday morning. And John Healey, I don't think is as likely as a Labour leader. I think people look at Al Carnes as having that leadership quality that perhaps John Healey doesn't have. But Healey was seen as quite a close ally of Starmer's.
He was.
It's quite interesting. So I want to talk about two things, and I'd be keen to hear your thoughts on this. Firstly, the defence angle. So what's interesting is we went through a very long period, certainly when I was growing up in politics, where the defence budget was continuously cut in terms of GDP, percentage of GDP. And it was also used often, particularly from people on the left of politics, as an easy battering ram to kind of say, why are we spending all this money on defence when we could be spending it on the NHS, on education? What's changed principally is Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 was a key moment where a lot of people said, okay, actually we do need to invest in our armed forces.
Is it that, or is it Donald Trump saying that we all have to spend more on defence?
I think both things kind of coincide, but I think it's very much 2022 because what happened when Russia invaded Ukraine was the long-standing assumption that war in Europe was a thing of the past was suddenly over, and it was such a shock for a lot of the liberal commentariat. They thought, no, but surely Russia isn't going to invade, and suddenly we've got war in Europe again, and I think it woke everybody up. And obviously Trump, particularly in his first term as president, was complaining about the fact that nobody was meeting their 2% of GDP spending on defence target, which all NATO countries have signed up to. They've pledged to spend 2% of their GDP, which they don't. Do you know how many countries do spend how many NATO countries do meet their target?
I don't know.
3, I believe. Just
wow.
the UK, which spends 2.6. And I want to say Germany's now meeting the target, actually. I think that's a change in the last couple of years. So maybe 4. UK at 2.6%. And then the US at 3.1, something like that. But they're not the top. Who's the top military spender in
Is it
NATO?
Israel? No.
No.
I don't know.
Poland.
Poland.
Yeah. So the
Wow, I wouldn't have got there.
countries on, and I'm worried now that I'm giving very false information because I want to say countries, the Baltics are definitely spending 3%. So what did I see that suggests, I might be wrong on that, because I think Latvia, Lithuania, these relatively newer NATO countries are spending a lot on defence because they see more of a threat from Russia.
That would make sense.
Yeah. Interestingly then, this defence investment plan, just to kind of give you some context on John Healey's resignation and then Al Khan's, he was asking, so the Ministry of Defence was asking for £18 billion over the next 4 years. And the Treasury offered initially 12 billion and then they upped it to 13.5 billion, which he said wasn't enough to fund the things they want to be doing with the military. Our defence spending in gross terms, so the amount of money that countries spend on defence in pounds or in dollars, let's say, where do we rank?
As a total amount rather than as a percentage of GDP, you mean? I'd have thought quite far down. 10th?
6th.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
So pretty high. That doesn't tell you the whole story because the countries above us, I think India, Germany are above us, but the countries above them are just way higher.
Yeah.
So particularly US and China. US is spending nearly $1 trillion a year now on defence, which is
I'm quite proud of 6th, actually. I think that's quite a good result.
But this is the thing, a lot of the narrative and the feeling, it actually doesn't stack up with the numbers. So we do actually spend quite a lot on defence compared to Spain, which is spending like 1.3% of their GDP. We're spending double that in percentage terms. What's talking about the general consensus then about where politics has gone since, and I would say since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the other parties all sort of agree that we need to up defence spending.
Yeah.
So we've got the main 5 parties at the moment. The Lib Dems, Conservatives and Reform are all pledging 3%. Lib Dems and Conservatives by 2030, Reform actually in 6 years. So the Lib Dems have a more hardline defence policy than Reform, interestingly.
Surprise.
The Greens don't say a great deal on it, but they've not said we want to cut funding. They've just said we need to spend more money on, the fluffier things. They claim
they want it to be fairer. I'm guessing they always want things to be fairer.
Yeah, it's got to be fairer. So there is a general consensus. And what's interesting is that John Healey and Al Khan's are basically saying that the Labour Party is not matching that agreement, that cross-party agreement that we need to be spending more on defence. Now, it's easy for somebody like John Healey, and ministers will always do this, to say, you're not giving us enough money, right? Everybody always wants a bit more money for their department. I think the question has to be, where does that money come from? What if you're spending defence, you're naturally going to be spending less money on something else that you could have been spending it on. So those conversations need to be had. I also think that we can't ignore the fact that this is playing out on the backdrop of Makefield by-election and the almost obvious Labour leadership election which is coming. And I don't think so much with John Healey that he'll be manoeuvring. I think there's potential, but I think Al Khan's particularly, I would put money on the fact that this is a politically inspired manoeuvre rather than one built on pragmatic principles. The odds for the Labour leadership election, which or the next Labour leader, which I suggested earlier. Do you know?
No.
So Burnham is out and out favourite by a mile.
Okay.
He's at like 1-3, 1-4.
Wow.
So he's just clear favourite because they're projecting that he'll win Makerfield. Second.
Not West Streeting, no.
No, my favourite, Ed Miliband.
Do you? Right, okay.
Then Angela Rayner, Ed Miliband's about 10-1, Angela Rayner about 14-1, Wes Streeting, and then Al Khan's. And Al Khan's, I think a lot of the media, you'll see this more and more, but they sort of push him to be potentially a dark horse figure that could contest the Labour leadership election. So it remains to be seen, but I would not be surprised at all if he puts his hat in the ring, particularly as the people above him that are trying to perhaps beat Burnham to the leadership, they're known quantities. So he can claim, look, you've got all of this exposure, all of this publicity, and you're still not able to get near Burnham. To get behind me, and I've got a chance to beat him. I think that's highly likely.
Where is he MP for?
Birmingham Selly Oak.
Okay.
What I would say about Al Khan's and the media, he reminds me, he's like a British Pete Buttigieg. Do you know Pete Buttigieg?
I don't think I do.
So
no.
he was mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and he threw his hat in the ring for the Democratic nomination for president.
Okay.
In 2020.
I thought he might be the USA left back.
No. And the media pushed him as like, oh, he's a really talented individual, potentially he could win it. And I just think that we have such a dearth of talent in politics that we look at people like Al Khan's and think, wow, very, very special, very talented. And realistically, why? What's he got? And I'm not attacking him and saying he's not got any ability. I just want to see some ability.
Yeah.
Just let me see something.
Yeah.
It's the same with, and you might disagree with this, but Kemi Badenoch recently, I keep hearing very sane people just say, been very impressed with Kemi Badenoch. I think she's really in with a shot here. And I'm like, okay, she said like one sensible thing, guys. Calm down. Right.
Yeah. I do know somebody who's worked quite a high level in the military complex, if you want to call it that, and he was very impressed with Khan's. So maybe.
But it's that classic thing of we're in vibe-based politics, right? And it's that classic thing of like he's a sort of broad-shouldered man.
Yeah.
He's greying hair as well, so he looks experienced. He's been there, done that. He's got armed forces experience. He was a Royal Marine for 20 years, I think. And so he's able to speak to people. He's able to lead.
We love a man in a uniform.
Doesn't mean that he'll be a good prime minister.
No.
And we have to, I think, as a country, we have to kind of come to the realisation that it is not. We're not going to succeed by taking one person out and putting another in and going, oh, let's run it back, as they say in the NBA. Rather than making any trades, you run it back, try it again.
Just being a bit more serious for a moment.
Oh, yes.
So I think there was a third...
That's what you bring to the podcast.
I think there was a third resignation, wasn't there? A permanent private secretary has resigned as well.
Yeah.
Patricia Nash is her name, I think. And I just wonder to what extent do those kind of resignations actually have a real impact on our military? Because obviously at the moment we're in dangerous times internationally, but given the riots, etc., we're also in kind of quite dangerous times internally as well. And I think Khan said something in his tweet along the lines of, we owe a duty to our military to give them the right kit and to back them up whatever they do. I think that latter is a bit of a dig at the kind of court cases against soldiers, the kind of historic court cases. And if he's saying that, do the people in the military, the senior people in the military then think, well, okay, so the minister thinks they're not giving us the right kits and they're not backing us up, Is it therefore reasonable for me to send my troops out on the streets in the event of riots if the police lose control of the streets? So, is this really in kind of political crisis territory is the question I'm asking. Is it more, you're kind of taking it's all about the leadership approach. Am I being just a bit of a worrier to think, actually, is it much more serious than that?
I think we're due a political crisis. Not that we're short of them, but I think there will be one. a big one, and I don't think this is it.
Okay.
And I think we're in for. We will go through the motions for a while before, and there is relative. I would say relative stability. I think that perhaps you don't see from the news within the military, etc. We have a brilliant military by all accounts that a lot of countries are jealous of.
They had their pay award agreed last week, I noticed.
Is that right?
3.6%, in line with the recommendation of the Armed Forces Pay Review Body.
Interesting. And I don't think this is as serious as it might seem. I don't think this is the big political crisis.
Okay.
I think this is just the same sort of Punch and Judy politics that we've seen over the last few years. And maybe that's a bit unfair. I think John Healey and Al Khan's, they might have slightly more principled reasons for resigning. And, you know, if they've had those backroom conversations with Starmer and said, look, you know, this is not enough, and they think there's real reason why that's a problem for the military, then resigning is perhaps, you know, the right thing to do. But I think, look, we're in mid-June. There's going to be a new prime minister, I reckon, in a couple of months' time, and we'll go through the cycles again of, you know, announcing policies and announcing things, and I just think part of what we try and do is take a step back and say, well, let's not get so invested in who's going to be the next Labour leader. It's good fun, right? But I don't think it matters too much. I know a lot of people that are really worried, you know, it might be Miliband and they don't like that, or it might be Rayner and they don't like that. And I think realistically we have to be working towards a better platform, a better solution that's more long-term thinking rather than getting caught up in this short-term politics.